Hi, my name is Caroline Porsiel, House of Applejack Distillery in East LAJ, Georgia, and also co-founder of the AMBRu Campaign, American Brandy Rum Campaign. So part one of this presentation is already online with the American Distilling Institute. So just search it on YouTube. I also link it down below. And this is now part two for everyone who missed our annual conference in Miami Beach. Now let me just dive into it really quick. Hold on. Let me just share this. Here we go. So I hope everyone can actually see now the screen. So as said, this is part two of our AMBRu campaign, American Brandy Rum Campaign. Our idea is to actually build America's next great spirits movement together. And this presentation was held first August 17th at the ADI, American Distilling Institute's Rum Summit in Miami Beach in 2026. Now, today, market reality is that we have a supplier revenue together for brandy and rum in 2025. These are numbers of the Distilled Spirits Council of 4.1 billion. Now, interesting about this number is that we have imports of about 1 billion and exports of only 125 million. So the imports actually exceed the exports by 8.1. And the key is we don't have to invent demand for looking at the category of brandy and rum. The demand is already there because we already import 1 billion. The key is, as producers here in the US, this is a big piece of sales we can actually snatch. And the question is, how can we do this and why are we not doing it right now? So the demand exists. The problem is we don't have a shared identity. And the key here is that today most American brandy and rum producers actually don't really have a lot of visitors, and people say, oh, we want to try a brandy or a rum. Basically, people are coming to the tasting room, says, we like to have a bourbon. Do you produce a bourbon? So we do not really have a national story, despite, as I mentioned earlier in part one, we do have a history of making rum and brandy in the US. Now, if we're looking to bourbon and the bourbon story, which is actually a proof how it should have been done with brandy and rum to begin with, we do have today 68 to 69 stops in Kentucky, so distilleries producing. This is about 2.7 annual visits. And in an average, people stay 3 to 5 days and spend $600 to $1,400. That's altogether more than 10 billion. Now, the Kentucky bourbon economic impact is about 24,000 jobs. And this is not only distilleries, this is also hotels, restaurants, tour buses, and local businesses that profit from this trail and people visiting. Now, what we're having and what's really unique is that bourbon has an identity. It is clearly recognizable for all consumers because it was made a designated product of the United States in 1964. And the trail, the Kentucky Bourbon Trail that developed, actually made this product visitable. So people that want to learn about bourbon, they have to go to Kentucky and see it and experience it. So what we have in the example of bourbon, we have an identity, and we do have also a trail that makes the product actually visitable. And that is an economic powerhouse. Now, what does this mean for our idea of brandy and rum? Now, the idea is we want to build not only designate brandy and rum in the same way that bourbon was protected in 1964, but we also want to build an American Brandy and Rum Trail, basically the longest distillery trail in the world. And we want to connect, instead of 68, 500 plus distilleries and historic sites. So this will be not just one state, but 50 states together. And with purpose, I'm not really putting out numbers because this is all debatable, but I think everyone can make themselves, or you can get an idea on what scale this project has if we're just scaling it up from 1 to 50 states, one coordinated state system versus a whole national opportunity of connected trails. And the idea is not only to build a trail, but to actually have the recognition, the designation of the products, so that we're actually in quality as good as all international competitors, as in quality and also in manufacturing wise, not adding any ingredients, etc. So the key is we have a recognition, we have coordination, we get tourism, and this causes the economic development that we are interested in. So this means for AMBRu is basically the framework, and the idea is we create first the identity, and then the trail creates the revenue for all the distilleries and rural economies. So the idea is one system that connects category standards with tourism infrastructure. So the designation, that will be basically giving us the category for distillers, how we define ourselves. I will actually go into detail on the next pages. And the national trail turns all of that into a visitable revenue. Now, I'm a distiller myself. I don't really need more paperwork, to be frank. I have a lot of paperwork, but the overall idea is very visible if I just show what we're intending. We do not want to add a mandatory category or class. What we want to do is, in our existing beverage manual of the TTB, every distiller knows this. Here's the link in the middle. And down here you see actually whiskey that has a general class definition. And underneath this, there is a type, and that's called bourbon whiskey. And it basically reads, whiskey produced in the US at not exceeding 80% alcohol by volume, etc., etc. And then the definition follows. Now, if we're taking a look at today's definition of rum, we see, well, there is a general class definition, but there is no type under this class. So the idea would be to add actually a type that distilleries can opt in, and we would call it American rum. And basically the same, it must be produced in the US, and we define certain quality standards to compete internationally on the same levels like high quality rums. And if we're taking a look at brandy on the left-hand side here, we see, well, there are Cognac, Armagnac, Calvados, and these must be produced in France. We also have Pisco, which must be produced in Peru. And it would be easy just to add here again another type that is optional to basically opt in and say this is now American brandy, and we define it to be produced in the United States. And this would actually give us, here's a little bit of an overview on the main language that we want to use, give us the advantage that we're adding a quality type or a category to our existing catalog that consumers can understand. So consumers right now don't really have an idea what brandy and rum is. And very often the definitions are a little vague. And this is to actually write this designation and put it into stone that we are on the same level like cognac, like rum agricole. And this is actually enables all producers to compete internationally in the same high quality price ranges. And beside to be distilled in the US, I think the category having no additives added is a very important point as well. Now, this is voluntary to use. Everyone who's already producing to these standards can just ask the TTB to add this classification, whereas nothing will change if you don't. Now, we're not talking about 68 distilleries in the framework that we're actually planning. To have a data set of 68 or 69 or 70 is fairly simple to handle. Now, the framework we designed for AMBRu is much, much larger. And I just want to point out, we have our lessons learned. I'm also co-owner of Distillery.news, which is basically a very early project we had, and we mapped more than 41,000 distilleries, wineries, and breweries worldwide. So we learned a lot of the lessons from spam to what not to do in larger frameworks. And I think we have a lot of very feasible and very smart ideas that we want to put into the new system. This also means that we're basically integrating existing trails. I spoke with Georgia Brown, for instance, how to actually get their ideas into or parallel into our framework, and how to connect and to work together, basically. Now, the trail we're planning is not just scaling up from 69 to 500. I call it the Living American History Trail, because if you think about it, American rum has more to offer than just being produced and how it's produced. It's a part of history. We have American rum touches American independence heavily. The Molasses Act, the Sugar Act have been basically all about rum. And if we have historic sites that we can tie in, we can tell a whole revolutionary story and connect this to certain parts of the trail. Also, rum is connected to the very hard truth of sugar trade, triangular trade, the enslavement of people. All of this can be part of showing on a connected trail the history of rum. This includes plantations on how and where rum or sugarcane is actually produced. Now, there's also room for new American distilling inventions, the recognition of emerging new talents, and we just seen a lot of very interesting things presented on the Rum Summit of the American Distilling Institute this August. Now, there is also the possibility for, I call it, localized storytelling. There are lots of stories people love to remember, but they're not so popular known. For instance, that George Washington visited a place and got pretty drunk somewhere on the Schuylkill River in New York. Or that, for instance, the brandy heritage, Johnny Appleseed planted a lot of apples. Lots of them got vanished during Prohibition, so we touched Prohibition. We could actually also bind in, there are several plantations that are using now old and very rare fruits and restart plantations with these old apples varieties. Or if you think about modern scale distilling, whereas Appalachia might have a lot of older history, California, for instance, has a very large-scale brandy production today few people know about. So there is a lot to tell, and I think going onto this trail should be more than just visiting one distillery after the next. We really can tell a whole story about the history of American distilling, and I think this will make it very fascinating for everyone. Now, to just show the overall trail concept, this is not just one national story. We actually have 50 chapters. We have 50 states. And this overview just shows the main roads, whereas the moment you would zoom into detail, you would actually see there are more or less distilleries that like to take part. And this is just made right now for illustration. And as I said, it's supposed to be one epic historic trail throughout the North American distilling landscape. Now, I really am right now in the position to invite a lot of distillers to join us. It's free to join AMBRu. It's free of charge. you become a founding member. Everyone who joins until the end of 2026, we will give you a founding member status. Basically, you get a little different pin on our map. You can voice your standards, take part in the discussion, and be early part of the trail and when we roll out. So just sign up. And here again, just to get you a little bit about the math that we're doing. So 68 stops in Kentucky today with 2.7 million visitors. If we would just, for illustration purposes, and this is not, I really don't want to discuss the detailed numbers, as I said earlier. It's just for illustrations. If we would have a national scenario, let's say with 544 stops, and we would have 2.7 million visitors in the beginning years, that would be, in average, 5,000 visitors more per distillery. And I'm very clear, this is not going to be that one location has more visitations than another. It depends on also geographical locations. But also one lesson learned, we have on distillery.news several locations that are far, far out in the oceans or in the actually the mountains of Himalayas. There's a brewery, and these excluded positions actually get a lot of hits virtually. So it might be even an advertisement, and that supports certain distilleries despite being a little bit more off the grid. So in the ending, this is just advantageous for all the craft distilleries in North America. Now, why 500? I was asked this a lot. Well, this is just a number. Yes, I just chose it as the first step, and it's still selective. So this is not overly ambitious because we have more than 2,500 active distilleries in the United States. We have even more historic sites, farms, museums, tourism partners that might be interesting to join in. So we only need a fraction of current distilleries to actually take part to achieve this number. Now, from the national architecture, just to get an idea, so I built the framework and the trail architecture, but the key implementation will be done regional. And that's why we're actually talking to tourism partners, to state organizations, to distillers guilds, etc. So the key, and as I said earlier, is right now to get the founding producer list together. We're refining the proposed standards, and then we actually build the regional clusters, and then we engage the tourism board, chambers, and all state officials to also support market our trail. Now, the timeline. We're now in 2026, and our idea is we're, as I'm doing right now, I'm actually reaching out for everyone to join in. So if you have a DSP, a distilled spirit license in the United States, come on and join us and become a founding member. Get onto the trail. It's free of charge again. And the formal petition to the TTB for the designation, I think we could be ready by end of the year. So the beginning of 2027, the target is actually to send the first trail pilots online as soon as we actually have the filing with the TTB. Because as I said, initially it's about identity and visitation. So the key is we need to designate to repeat the miracle of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And of course, this is an ongoing public process. We're expanding where we can. We are building coalitions, and I have, as I said, already talked with Georgia Grown Trails and several other organizations, and I'm very positive to move forward very soon. Now, if you have any questions, as said, you can always come and contact me. But my hope is that our founding list is growing. Just scan the QR code or go to AMBRu.org, join our newsletter, and help build the American Brandy and Rum Trail, and help designate American Brandy Rum, because these products really deserve it. They're wonderful products, and we just need to change that. No one at this point really gives them the stage that they're deserving, historically speaking, and of course from a taste perspective. Okay, my name is Caroline Porsiel, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I didn't talk too fast. Thanks a lot, and bye.